There is nothing quite like watching an angry and burly German man with a giant hammer swinging his way to victory. Learning to harness the power of this absolute unit of a man can quickly launch you up the competitive ladder. Today I'm going to teach you the ways of Reinhardt Wilhelm Plat and Below Edition. My name is Nathan and this is Blizzard Guides. So I'm going to structure this guide based on some general tips for Rein and then go through all of his abilities. I'll be explaining the big picture first, so what the main purpose of each ability is and when and where you should use it, and then go into some more technical tips. This guide is designed for players from about mid-diamond to bronze, or if you're masters and GM looking to pick up a new hero that you might not know really all that well. There are some really good technical tips in this video that will help you a lot despite your SR. So now that I've got that out of the way, let's get right into this guide. So at number 6, we're going to look through some general tips. What role to play as Rein, when to play Rein, and where to play Rein. As Reinhardt, you are the ultimate protector and space maker for your team, just like any main tank. You ultimately get to decide where your team goes, and you are solely responsible for opening up space for your team to play on. Reinhardt performs best with ground-based teammates on maps that don't incorporate a lot of verticality or open space. For this reason, as Rein, your best bet is playing on maps like King's Row, Dorado, Eichenwald First, Lijiang Night Market, etc. In addition to this, Reinhardt is arguably the best tank for controlling choke points. Now, since Reinhardt doesn't have very intense mechanics, your game sense is going to be your strongest tool. The best Reinhardts know exactly when and where your team needs to be, with quick analysis of the risk and reward of certain positions, use of abilities, and general aspects of the Overwatch meta game. As Reinhardt, you must learn when to aggress and when to protect and retreat. Learning to analyze the team comps and discerning where the enemy will attack from and what damage will be lethal is under that umbrella of game sense. A good Reinhardt knows exactly what damage to block and knows the exact moments to put pressure on the enemy team. That brings me to number 5, Reinhardt's iconic shield. Strong shield management as Reinhardt is the biggest tool you have to secure quick victories. A bad Reinhardt never has his shield. This goes back to what I was just talking about, good game sense. Deciding which ally will need your shield most is the first thing you must do. So for example, if your McCree wants to try and gun down a retreating enemy, shield that. Widowmaker trying to threaten your team? Shield that. Lone Baby Diva attempting to shoot an ally tank? Probably you don't need to shield that. You're naturally protected by the map geometry? Probably not either. It seems pretty obvious, and it is, but it's something that should be drilled into your head as Rein. You should immediately break the habit of shielding for the sake of shielding, since you won't ever have a healthy shield. It is a constant battle of risk and reward, just like any game sense based hero. So if the enemy is about to engage you, you want to have your shield up. You can't just be blocking damage when it doesn't really matter. Now, aside from shield management, you want to play corners. Corners are your best friend as Rein. If you aren't playing your corners, you're not getting value out of your shield. Doing so will protect you from flankers, since your shield doesn't protect your sides. Also, you can do a bunch of obscure things with your shield. You can use it to block McCree flashbangs, you can shield right after charging a hog to block the impending hook and shotgun combo, you can use it to kill ulting Pharahs with their own barrage if they're too close to the ground, and you can even use it to detach pulse bombs from allies if you hold your shield and walk past an ally. And the last tip for a shield, don't ever let it go down below 500 HP. If you're deciding between retreating and pushing and you have a 500 HP shield, don't push. You can use that little sliver of health left to block any ultimates that are incoming, so keeping that little bit is super useful if you absolutely need it. So for example, if a Diva Bomb comes out and you still have that 500 HP, or even 1 HP for that matter, if you time it correctly, you can still block the entire Diva Bomb with that little bit of shield, so it does come very useful if you do need it. Next up at number 4, we have Fire Strike. Fire Strike is Reinhardt's only ranged ability and his quickest burst ability, so there are 2 main uses for Fire Strike: engagement or cleanup of teamfights, and quickly finishing off squishies. You want to Fire Strike right before you engage the enemy or right before they engage you, since comboing this in tandem with the poke damage that your team is already laying down might secure a really solid first pick for your team. And furthermore, you can Fire Strike to quickly burst an enemy dead, or at least force them to retreat or use any escape abilities that they might have, since they will instantly have 50% of their HP shaved off. I personally like to use Fire Strike on enemy supports, as typically their knee-jerk reaction is to burn their abilities. So if you Fire Strike an Ana, they might grenade, or a Lucio might amp. Some quick tips would be to always use it on the enemy before the match begins if you're on defense, since that will almost always net you around 20 to 30% of charge on your ult. Also, the top and bottom halves of the Fire Strike don't have a hitbox, so if you're trying to hit an enemy on high ground, you can usually surprise them, since they won't expect the Fire Strike to actually pass through the edge of the high ground. This is useful in some edge scenarios, but it's good to know that the hitboxes don't really exist on the top and bottom parts of the Fire Strike, although they can still hit the enemy from the top and the bottom halves. At number 3, we're taking a look at Reinhardt's most infamous ability, Rocket Hammer. First off, let's just acknowledge how freaking cool it is. It's literally a hammer that has a rocket strapped to the back of it, and he uses that to pummel through enemies. Anyway, it's just really cool. This is Reinhardt's main form of damage, but since it's not too mechanically complex, it more so falls under that umbrella of game sense. You'll want to start swinging and pushing forward if you want to get the enemy to retreat a bit, and you can move your camera around a bit while swinging to hit multiple targets, but other than that, there's really not that much to the basics for the hammer. You'll get it pretty quickly by playing Rein. However, there are some really good technical tips. First off, you can really effectively use it to knock an enemy around and prevent them from escaping. So for example, if they're walking past a doorway, you can time your hammer in such a way that they go right behind the corner of the doorway, and they kind of mess up and they get stalled for long enough for you to lay more damage down and hopefully secure a kill. This is also really useful for getting Winstons out of the bubble or Reins away from their team. The knockback is something that is very underutilized when it comes to Rein play. Also, if you put your reticle slightly to the side of the enemy that you're trying to hammer, you can slightly extend the range of your hammer because the hitbox of the hammer is a giant rectangle, meaning you can artificially extend the range through some careful hitbox manipulation and simple geometry. Now for number 2, we have Charge. Charge is really useful for disrupting enemy tanks and quickly securing a kill. However though, Charge should be used extremely carefully. You can't just use it for the sake of using it, since you'll more often than not put yourself into a position where you'll be defenseless and dead. This again boils down to the principle of risk versus reward, so essentially you should always ask yourself, will this charge create space for my team, or will I be charging in by myself? If the charge will create an opening for your team to get into the fight, then go for it. However, if it might not, then definitely do not go for it. You want to be a little bit more careful when it comes to charging. Err more on the side of I'm protecting myself rather than putting myself out there. It's a super risky ability to use. And you especially don't want to go for unnecessarily long charges, since that will almost always kill you. However though, there are some really cool tricks you can do with charges. Firstly, you can jump and charge at the same time, allowing you to still move while charging your charge up. This can lead to some really cool plays, like jumping around a corner and charging and catching an enemy by surprise. Secondly, you can extend the distance of your charge by holding space and shield as you charge, or at least right as you exit the charge, to extend the range by about a body and a half. This can be really useful for quite a few things, as it allows you obviously to get a bit more range, but it also allows you to instantly exit your charge holding shield. And for the last section of this video, at number 1, we have Reinhardt's EARTHSHATTER. EARTHSHATTER is a really useful tool in Rein's kit, since it charges obscenely fast. Fire Strike is going to be your primary method for charging your ult. If you can get a Fire Strike to pass through multiple enemies, you can get 10 to 20% charge per Fire Strike, allowing you to get your ult super quickly. This means that you can basically use EARTHSHATTER as a really long cooldown ability. You want to use EARTHSHATTER to quickly secure quick kills and to open up space for your team. The targets you're going to be looking for when you shatter are any supports that are nearby but by themselves, enemy main tanks, or ulting DPS. If you can secure a shatter on any of these targets, whilst also including a few others, you'll be able to get the most value out of your shatters in the game. You should also surprise the enemy with shatters, never telegraph them. Shatter is a bit finicky though, so always be aware of the enemy shields, protruding map geometry, or weird angles in the ground. More often than not, these things will block your shatters, so you have to be constantly aware of what's on the ground and in front of you. Shatter works in sort of a ripple, so be mindful of that always. Some really good tips for shatters are as follows. 1. Any enemies that are right next to you or right behind you will sometimes actually get shattered, so if you time it right, you can walk right past the enemy Rein and shatter his team in addition to getting him in the shatter without having to bait his shield. 2. If you shatter the enemy and you're trying to get a Fire Strike off as well, which you should always do, you'll notice sometimes that the Fire Strike's angle won't allow you to hit more than one enemy. What you can do though is crouch so that the launch position of the Fire Strike is closer to the ground, allowing you to launch the bottom of the Fire Strike's hitbox to graze other enemies as well, giving the Fire Strike a longer travel time and a bigger area of effect. And lastly, you can EARTHSHATTER from the top of the payload so that it travels through the payload onto the ground. However, the reverse isn't necessarily true. I found that you can shatter people on Route 66, Hollywood, and Blizzard World payloads, but not the Numbani and Dorado ones. It's kind of finicky, so you have to be very careful about when and where you shatter, obviously. Just keep in mind that you can shatter some of the payloads. Anyway, I hope this guide helps you guys out to learn the ways of the hammer-wielding monster of a man that is Rein. Let me know in the comments down below what guide you'd like to see next, or if you have any questions about the game in general, you can always tweet me on Twitter at engage_exe. Don't forget to leave a like on this video, as it really helps us know that you guys are enjoying the content, and don't forget to subscribe, as we have a lot of epic moments videos so that you can see the best plays from around the globe, and we also have tips and tricks videos so that you can be the best Overwatch player that you can be. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a nice day. My name is Nathan, and this was Blizzard Guides.
Honor! Justice! Reinhardt! Reinhardt! Reinhardt!